Have you ever wanted to add your own functionality to Ubot Studio? Have you ever been interested in developing your own plugin? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to build your first plugin. We're going to make a basic plugin that just does a few things, and if you guys are interested in this topic, I'd like to make more videos talking about more advanced topics related to plugin development. So let's dive right in. Now, here is the Ubot Studio wiki page on plugin development. And you can get here by going to wiki.ubotstudio.com. Looking on the right hand side under Ubot Studio plugins, click on plugin development. This page actually has a lot of useful information, and just by reading it and following along with this video, you'll easily be able to make a plugin even if you have no knowledge in C# at all. Now, you can reference this page at any time. If you're curious to know information about the plugin API, this has a bunch of information. It doesn't tell you everything, and it's mostly just the very basic stuff, but it's a good reference to have. Now, one of the first things you're going to need to do is download the ubot plugin.dll, because we're going to have to reference that in our project. So if you don't already have this, just grab it right now. Another thing to note here is if you click on plugin examples and download this file, there are more examples than there are on this page. And they're actually plugins that work in Ubot. And they actually show you a few things that they don't even mention on this page. So it's a great resource to poke around with if you want to start making plugins. I highly suggest just going through that and seeing how they do things. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to basically follow this little guide here, because this is what you're going to have to do basically to start every project anyway. So we're just going to follow along with their creating the project. So first things first, grab your DLL. Okay, and then what we need to do is open up Visual Studio and click Create New Project. Now for this project, what you're going to want is a WPF app. Go ahead and name it something. I'm just going to name it plugin demo. And hit OK. I just want to take a quick moment to tell you about my new ebook, How to Write Clean Code, Guidelines for Maintainable Ubot Code. This is a free ebook which covers several techniques to help you write better code in Ubot. First couple of chapters talk about refactoring and naming conventions, and I believe that both beginners and advanced users will benefit from reading these first couple of chapters. And from there, we talk about more advanced topics, which I believe will benefit intermediate users all the way up to experts. This ebook is free, so go ahead and click the link in the description below to download it right now. Now, once Visual Studio has built the project, we're going to come over into the Solution Explorer over here, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to delete app.xaml and window.xaml. Then what we're going to do is right click on the project name, not the solution name up here, but the project name here. Right click, go to Properties, click on Output Type, Class Library. What this is going to do is, if it's a Windows application or a console application, it's going to create an exe file. If it's a class library, it's going to create a .dll file. And that's what plugins are, they're .dll files. We're just going to hit save, and you can close out of this. Now, under the references here, right click on it and click on Add Reference. And this is where you're going to add your ubot plugin.dll. So you can hit the browse button and find yours. Mine is in here. So I've already imported it a million times, and Visual Studio knows that. And so I can just go to Browse Recent and tick that box, hit OK. And now under the references, we can see all the way down here that we have a reference to ubot plugin. That means that we can access the Ubot plugin API. So now what we need to do is we need to actually start adding some commands and functions. So we're going to start with a command. So right click on your project and go down to add, and we want to add a class. And now we need to name this. So what I like to do is I like to name my commands and functions like something command, something function, and I also like to put them in their category folders. So let's say that the category I had, and you know what a category is. If I go over to Ubot, these are categories: browser commands, browser functions. I would have a folder that said browser commands. And then if I had a command that was navigating, I would say like navigate command. So what we're going to do in this case is we're just going to create sort of like a hello world type script where we just alert the user the input. And so we might call it something like alert command or message box command. You know, in this case, I'm just going to call it alert command and hit add. Now, the first thing we need to do is make our class public, of course. Now what we need to do is we need to inherit from the interface iubot command. So what we're going to do is put a space, put a colon, and then we're going to type iubot command like so. And now what we can do is use IntelliSense by hitting control dot. And at the bottom, it's going to say iubot command using ubot plugin. It's going to want to generate an interface. Don't generate your own. Come down to here and find this. Now, alternatively, if for some reason you don't have this, because this might be in some Visual Studio plugin I have that looks at extra references, what you can do is you can come up here and type using, and then type U, and Ubot plugin will come up, and there you go. And now it's still got the red squiggly. And the reason it's got this red squiggly is because we haven't implemented the interface yet. So what we need to do is we need to come up here, hit control dot, and did I spell that wrong? Okay, I guess we have to change it. Did I spell that wrong? Oh, I did. Okay, my capitalization was off. So there we go. Once we get past that, we need to implement the interface now. So we can just control dot and hit enter, and Visual Studio is going to generate all of this code automatically for us. So if we look at the iubot command interface, I'm going to hit Alt F12. We can see that this interface basically is saying that we need to have these things in it. So it's saying we need to have a property called command name. We need to have a property called category. We need to have a property called parameter definitions, and this is going to be an enumerable, or it could be a list basically. We need to have a true or false property that is saying, is this a container command? And I'll explain what that is. And we need to have this property of this enum ubot version. And again, I'll explain what that is. Finally, we need to have a method called execute. And that's the signature there that it's going to pass. So one thing that you'll notice right away that's different in the way that my code looks from the code on the wiki is because this was made forever ago when they just used regular properties. These days, a lot of times you still do use regular properties, but sometimes you use an expression body property. And that's why this might look different. My flux was kicking in, so I hope that didn't show up in the video. But so we're using expression body property. That's what's going on here. That's why we got this weird arrow thing. So for our command name, we could write alert like so. Now, this is the same as this. Oops. Okay, so these are the same thing. So in case you're wondering why it looks different on this page, this is just because we're using a newer version of Visual Studio, a newer C# version that supports these expression body properties. So don't freak out if yours looks different. You can write it in this way as well. But because this is newer, and there's a fair chance that if you're using like Visual Studio 2017, yours is going to look like this. We're going to roll with this. Okay, so command name. The command name is what is going to show up in the bar here for your commands. So Ubot themselves, they have their own alert command, but it's all lowercase. And it's in this flow commands category. So ours is going to have an uppercase and it's going to be in a different category. Speaking of categories, what category do we want to put this in? I'm going to put, what do I name this plugin demo? I'm going to put demo commands like so. So now we're going to have a category in Ubot that says demo commands. And when you expand it, we'll have a command that says alert. Now at this point, I should mention real quick that there are other ways of doing this whole process, but I want to keep this to be super basic for this first video. And the point is that I'd like to show you those other ways, those more advanced things. But I don't want to just dive into the advanced topics right away without having some sort of introductory video. So that's what this is. Not only am I gauging interest, whether or not you're interested in making plugins and these kinds of videos, but I'm also putting out the first of a possible series or mini course perhaps of videos. Okay, so let's talk about what the rest of this stuff is and then we can fill it in. Now this public enumerable Ubot parameter definition of parameter definitions, this is a list of parameters. So what is a parameter? If we come back into the flow commands and we look at the alert, the message is a parameter. And so this is how we add these parameters. Some have more than one parameter. Let me see if I can find one here. I think some functions have one. So let me just set something real quick and then find one like replace. Replace is a good example. Okay, so replace has 3 parameters. So the way that we can add different parameters is by creating a list of parameters. So let's look at that in just a second. There's one or two more things to cover. One is container. So we're letting Ubot know whether or not this is a container. So let me drag out the alert command. This is not a container command. The reason is because alert does not contain any other commands. You cannot put another command inside of an alert. It's just going to go above it like so. This loop, however, is a container command. Do you see how it says drag commands here? That means you can put other commands inside of it. So that's what a container is. The container holds other commands. Ubot version. Now there's 3 different Ubot versions. And if you just hit Ubot version dot, now over here you're going to see these little blue boxes. So those are going to be the options. So we have developer, we have professional, and we have standard. And those are the only 3 options. Now for standard, that means that everyone can use this command. It will show up in everyone's Ubot. If you use professional, then only professional and developer editions will be able to see this command. And in most cases, you're not probably ever going to use professional. You're going to use standard or developer. And the reason you would want to use developer is if it was changing Ubot's interface, user interface that is, in some way. And so if you were doing something like changing the window color, you would have to put developer edition as per the Ubot plugin rules basically. So you can't give standard users access to developer level commands basically. So in this case, and in most cases, you're just going to put standard. And execute. Execute is going to run when the command is called. So this is where we're going to put the code that implements the alert command. So how does it alert? So we'll get to that. Now, I wanted to explain all that in one fell swoop because now we need to talk about adding a list of parameters. And that's going to take a little bit of work. So let's get started with that. The first thing we need to do is actually create a list of parameters. And this says IEnumerable, but basically that means it will allow us to use a list. And that's what we're going to use. It's just the easiest way to do it. So I'm going to type list. And then I'm going to just start typing Ubot. And I'm going to find Ubot parameter definition. And I'm going to hit OK, or tab, I should say. And now we need to name this. So let's name it parameters. I'm actually going to put underscore here. I'm just going to make this private. And we need to initialize the list. And it's just easiest to do it right up here up top. So we created a list of Ubot parameter definition. We named it parameters. So now we're going to say that this property returns this field of parameters. Okay, so now we need to accept something from the user. So just like in Ubot's command alert, it says message. Let's put the same thing. So we're going to create a private string. And I'm going to just use the underscore here because later I'm going to create a string that just says message. And it's just easier to do it this way. So private string message equals, and we can write message here, like so. So now we have a list of parameters and we have a parameter that we want to add. Now we need to actually put this onto the list. So the way that we do that is through the classes constructor. And first, let me just type this out and then I will explain it. You can type CTOR and see how it says there's a code snippet. All you have to do is hit tab twice. Visual Studio is automatically going to create the constructor. If for some reason you can't do that, just type public, then the name of the class, and then the parens here, and then the brackets. And this is a constructor. A constructor is called when the class is created. So when Ubot decides that it wants to use this command, it's going to call this constructor first. And what we're going to do in this constructor is we're going to add our message parameter to the parameters list. So to do that, we need to say parameters.add. And what do we want to add? Well, this is a list of Ubot parameter definition. So we want to add a Ubot parameter definition item. So we can do that by typing new, and then it automatically suggests that for us. So we can hit tab, and then our parens. Now the name is going to be message, and we created this string message. So we can just copy that into here, and comma, and now it's going to ask for the Ubot type. So I'm just going to hit tab dot so you can see what the options are. So this is saying, what is this parameter? Is it a string? Is it a list? Is it a table? Or is it a variable? Now, in the case of the alert command, this is a string. You know, we can type whatever we want in here, it doesn't matter. In the case of the loop command, this too is a string. In the case of the set command, this would be a variable. We are creating a variable in this particular case. So down here is a string, but up here is a variable. And of course, in the add list to list command, you know, this is a list, and I'm sure you know what a table is as well. And so you can use like a set table cell or something like that to see what a table is. So in most cases, we're going to be using a string, but sometimes you want to accept a list or something different. But for the most part, we're going to be working with strings. So we're going to say string and hit OK. Now there's more to this Ubot parameter definition, and you can create various options in here, like a dropdown or something. But that's a bit beyond the scope of this introductory video. I just want to point it out in case you want to do some poking around on your own. You can, instead of doing this, you can say Ubot parameter definition, and then you could initialize it with some stuff. And then you can, in here, look at the different options. So if you want to toy around with that, that is an option. But for now, all we want to do is add our parameter to the parameters list. So now we're returning the parameters, and we want to say, is this a container? We want to say no. So no, this is of course false, because this is a Boolean value, so it accepts true or false. And now it looks like we have everything filled out, except for the execute part. So let's just see if this works. I'm gonna hit Control-Shift-B, or you can come up to build and do that. All right, we don't have any errors. I'm gonna right click on here and go to open folder in File Explorer, or in here you can open containing folder. And I just went up one level to this folder, and then click bin, debug, and here is our plugin demo. So I'm gonna copy that path, go up to Ubot, add the plugin, and then hit OK. And it's going to say, warning, the following plugins have not been reviewed, which is fine. That just means we don't have a plugin key. So if you were to compile this and start it, it would give you that error message as well. That's just Ubot trying to make sure you don't create your own plugins and distribute them without a key. And now we can look under here, and we have a new section called demo commands. And we have an alert called alert. And that alert even has a message parameter. So we can type hi, and nothing's going to happen because we haven't done anything with it yet. But it looks like so far everything is working. So what do we do in this execute? Well, we want to alert a message to the user. So we can do that by using a message box. So a shortcut key for message box is MBOX, tab tab. And it's going to yell at us right now. And the reason it's going to yell at us is because it doesn't have a reference to forms. So it doesn't know what forms is. Now there's two ways to solve this. One way, you can right click on references, add that, come into assemblies, type forms, add a reference here. Just tick that box. But a better way possibly is to just delete the forms and use the system's Windows message box here. And this is now going to hopefully build and show us a test message. So let's just go ahead and look at that. And there's something I want to bring up. And I hope it happens in this case because it's an important point to make. We have code here that we already put. So if I run this, it says the method or operation is not implemented. This is very important because we have implemented it now, but it says that. And the way that you can fix that is, and it depends on what you're doing. If you're doing like certain things, you will have to actually restart Ubot Studio. But in a lot of cases, you can go into code view, come back into node view, and now it sort of reinitialized it. And so when you hit run now, we see test. So whenever you reload your plugin, always go into code view and back into node view. And or alternatively, delete the command and drag out a new one. And of course, this just says test, but we'll fix that. That was just an important point to make. Okay, so we want to actually get the user's message into the message box. How do we do that? Well, we can see that what's being passed to this execute method is something called Ubot Studio, which is beyond the scope of this video, and this dictionary of parameters. And this is what we're looking for. So this dictionary basically has a key and a value. And the key is the parameters, the name of the parameter. So we stored this up here in a string. So we can use this as the key to get the value that the user input. So if we look at this, our name message is the key, and this is the value right here. And this is what we want to get. So we can type string message, or you can type var if you want, equals parameters, and then an open bracket, and then we can just put our message field right in there, and that's going to act as the key once again, and it's going to return us the value of that key basically. And now what we can do is put message, and we can build that and come back into Ubot and add our plugin again. And as you can see, you know, when you're working with plugins and you're doing this, and every time you have to build it and you have to come back in here, you have to add your plugin, you have to reinitialize this, and that way you get the value, so it's working now. That's not very efficient. So there are other more advanced topics I want to talk about as well, but they're far beyond the scope of this video, unfortunately. But for now, that is a way that you can do that. It's just each time you got to build it, you got to go over, you got to open the Ubot plugin window, which is slow, then you got to add the plugin, which is slow, then you got to close the window, which is slow. If you have to do that a few times for every command or function, and then you're making 50 commands or functions, you could see how that is not maybe the best way to go about things. All right, so we've added our first command. Now, I also want to add a function to show you the difference. So I'm going to add a new class. So you can right click on here, to add class, and we're going to say message builder function. Okay. Well, I don't need that .cs, I guess. I'm used to doing add new file that way, so this is a bit strange feeling for me. So we make that public, and now we want to inherit from iUbot function, and I'm gonna go faster this time. And we can use using the Ubot plugin. Get the red squigglies because we need to implement the interface. And there we go. And we need to name this function, and we already know what that is. It's the name that's going to show up in the category, and it's going to be green. And we want to give it a $sign here to denote that it's a function. And so we can say message builder. Now this is different. We have a return value and a return value type, but everything else is the same. So return value is this object, but in this case, really we only have a few different options. So for the return value type, we want to return a string, but it's a Ubot type. So the options are string, list, table, and variable. So we want to return a string, and so we need to make a string to return, basically. So let's say private string, return value. And I just like to do this. I don't think it's actually necessary. I think that initializing it already gives you an empty string, but I usually just always do that. And now we want to return that return value. So how does Ubot know what the return value is? Well, when we're executing the function, we're going to end up setting this value. All right. So we now need to create our category and our parameters and everything else. So I'm going to do everything. I'm going to do category in Ubot version. So for our categories, say demo functions, Ubot version is going to be standard. And now we can do the parameter definitions again. So we're going to need a private list. We can type list of Ubot parameter definition. So now we can put our list here, and you will likely forget this a bunch of times. So if something goes wrong, make sure you set that, because a lot of times you'll just type this out, then you'll type out the constructor and you'll add the things, and then you might forget to actually add that. I do that all the time. What do we need for the message builder? Well, we need some kind of message. So private string message. And now we need to add that to the parameters list. Like so, and it's a string, of course. And so it looks like we have everything filled in. Now, what do we want to do? Well, we need to get whatever the user types as a message. So, and just to be different, I'll put var this time, because you can do this if you want. So we get the value of the message parameter. And you know what, just for fun actually, let's put an appender. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna create an appender. So we're gonna create an appender. And I wanna do this because I wanna actually add another parameter definition so you can see what that's like. So what we can do is we can simply do the same thing under here. That's really all there is to it. And this is also a string. And that means that we also need to get our appender down here. Like so. Now we have a message and an appender. And what we can do is we can create a message that just says our message plus our appender. So we can set our return value, because that's what we want to set for the function. This is what Ubot's sending back from the function. As you know, functions always return something. You know, commands perform actions, functions return data. This is the data that's being returned. So in here, we don't type return. That's going to exit this method, and we don't want that. Instead, what we want to do is we want to set the return value equal to something. In this case, I'll say something like message plus appender, like so. And in fact, this would probably be a good place to string interpolation. So I'm gonna put $, and then I'm gonna put these brackets like so, and put message. And this way I can easily put a space here, and then I can put appender. And now there's going to be a space between the message and the appender. And that should be all there is to it. So let's go ahead and build that. Come back in, add our plugin. Reinitialize. Get rid of that. Come down into our parameters, find our demo functions. Here's our message builder. And our message is going to be hello. And our appender is going to be world. Run that. And it says message and appender. So something went wrong somewhere along those lines. Okay, so what happened here was I put the fields in here, and I should have put the local variables. So let's get rid of these underscores. Save that, rebuild it. Back into Ubot. Add the plugin. Hit OK, reinitialize, run that, and we get hello world. So it appears to be working. Now, I want to show you one more thing, just to make this not super introductory and quite exactly like the that Ubot page over here. Let's do one more quick thing. And again, I'm going to go rather quickly so this video isn't too long. Let's make a container command. So once again, we're going to right click, go to add class, and we will call this should we run container command. Don't need a .cs. So. And that's probably an awful name, but couldn't think of anything better in the moment. So we're going to inherit from ubot command, iubot command, add that, implement the interface. And our command name is going to be should we run. Category is going to be, we'll just use the demo commands again. I'm just going to stick a parameters in here for now, and control dot and let IntelliSense generate that field so that I don't forget to add this. This is a container, so this is the main difference we're doing right now. And the Ubot version is going to be standard, so everyone has access to it. So now we can come up here and we can change this to be a list. And then we can say equals a new list parameters. And we're just going to take in one that says, should we run? So private string, we'll just call this run equals run. Now we need a constructor so that we can add our parameter to the parameters list. Now we're expecting a Boolean, but Ubot doesn't have that option, so we have to take in a string and then convert it to a Boolean. And whoops, don't know how that happened, but we need to add it. There we go. I think we have everything we need. So let's go ahead and do a string run equals parameters with the field run. So we get the value that the user set. And now we want to parse this as a Boolean value. So we could type bool should run. And now we can say if bool.tryParse run, as it out should run, something like that. And what this is doing is basically we're saying, is this a valid parse? Like, did they type true or false? If they typed like 20, then this isn't a valid parse and we don't want it to throw an error. So that's why we're doing it this way. And now we say if should run. So if the value of should run, if we parsed it successfully and it's a true or false statement, then if we should run, then we're going to call Ubot Studio.run container command. And again, I don't want to go too deeply into this, but this is one way to use the Ubot Studio interface, is that you can call run container commands, and this method will run the commands inside of it, assuming that you put is container to be true. So let's build that and do the thing where we add the plugin, reinitialize. By the way, you can hit Control-I twice to be fast. And under demo commands, should we run? Drag that in here. And just say, okay. So nothing happens. And if we type false, and if you hit F5, it will run, by the way. So I can click it for visuals, but that's something I might do. What if we type true? Okay, if we type true, then it runs the commands inside of it. And so that's just a quick container command for you as well. So let me know if you like the content of talking about Ubot plugins, because I do have a lot more to say about the topic. And this has just been an introductory video, but there's a lot of stuff that you can do and a lot of optimizations we can make so that you don't have to type so much code and you don't have to come into Ubot every single time to try and test stuff. So that's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching.